What if I told you there's a country where entire cities once lived under constant fear, where stepping outside could mean risking your life? No warning, no escape, just silence, and then a shot. This is Bosnia and Herzegovina. For nearly 4 years, its capital, Sarajevo, but it was under siege. No electricity, barely any food, no safe way out. Surrounded by mountains and with snipers watching every move. People ran across open streets just to survive. Children grew up hearing gunshots instead of laughter, and the world didn't rush in. It watched, it waited, but even then, the people never broke. They built tunnels beneath the city. They risked everything, every single day, just to stay alive. Because resilience isn't just survival. It's refusing to lose your spirit when everything is taken from you. And then, just a few hours away, you find Mostar, a city once torn apart by war, where even its iconic bridge was destroyed. But today, that same bridge stands again, rebuilt, restored, a symbol that even after everything, people can rise again, from Sarajevo's scars to Mostar's beauty. His country tells a story the world should never forget, a story of pain, of survival, of unbreakable pride. So if you've ever wondered what real strength looks like, this is it. This is Bosnia and Herzegovina. If you look at Sarajevo, the first thing you'll see is a beautiful European city. But if you look at this city a little more closely, there's a story hidden behind every street, every building, and every mosque. This is a city where the influence of the Ottoman Empire is still visible, where Austro-Hungarian architecture is also visible, and this is the place where an assassination in 1914 pushed the world towards World War I. And just a few decades later, this same city witnessed one of the most painful wars in modern Europe. And today, it's a little different for me because I don't want to see this city just as a tourist. I want to understand the history behind what looks beautiful on camera. Sarajevo is the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the most interesting thing about this city isn't its architecture, but its mixture. In one city, you'll find Islamic Ottoman heritage, Christian religious buildings, Jewish heritage, and architectural influences from Austro-Hungarian Europe. This means that understanding Sarajevo is a way to understand Bosnia. First, let's clear one thing up. The country's name is Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina are actually two historical regions. Bosnia's name is probably related to the Bosna River, while Herzegovina's name is derived from the title of the medieval ruler Stjepan Vukčić Kosača, Herzeg, which means duke. And I'm making this correction because in a documentary, it's important to keep history interesting, but it's even more important to keep it accurate. The story goes back thousands of years. Long before Bosnia and Herzegovina existed as a modern country, this region was home to ancient peoples, including the Illyrians. By around the 7th century BC, Illyrian communities had been established across much of the Western Balkans, including parts of the territory that would later become Bosnia and Herzegovina. They were not a single unified nation, but a collection of different tribes spread across the Balkans. Then came the Roman Empire. During the 1st century AD, Rome conquered much of this territory. Roman influence brought new political structures than the Latin language and Christianity to the region, and this was only the beginning. For centuries, Bosnia would continue to pass through the hands of powerful civilizations, and now we have come to the part of Sarajevo where the Ottoman story of the city is most clearly visible. Today, we know this area as Bashar-Šića. The foundation of modern Sarajevo is generally associated with the Ottoman period in the 15th century. The year 1462 is considered an important date in the foundation of Sarajevo, when the Ottoman governor Isabeg Ishakovic began laying the foundations for the city's development. At that time, institutions such as markets, mosques, public baths, caravan facilities, and bridges helped transform the area into a proper urban center. The Ottoman period left one of the strongest architectural influences on Sarajevo's identity. Mosques, Islamic schools, markets, roadside inns, public baths, and charitable institutions all helped shape the city. You'll notice something interesting here. Markets and religious buildings were not completely separate from each other. Trade and community life were part of the same urban space. By the medieval period, Bosnia was becoming a significant state in the Balkans. For centuries, the region was influenced by neighboring powers, particularly Hungary, but Bosnia's mountainous landscape also helped it maintain a certain degree of independence. The Bosnian state was ruled by leaders known as bans. Among the most famous was Ban Kulin, who ruled from around 1180 to 1204. Later came one of Bosnia's most powerful medieval rulers, King Tvrtko I. During the reign of King Tvrtko I, Bosnia became one of the most powerful Slavic states in the Balkans. His kingdom expanded southward, including territory that would later be known as Herzegovina. But after Tvrtko's death, the kingdom gradually declined, and a new power was approaching the region, the Ottoman Empire. In 1463, the medieval Bosnian state came to an end when Ottoman forces captured important parts of central Bosnia, including the area around modern Sarajevo. Herzegovina was conquered roughly 2 decades later. Bosnia then became part of the Ottoman world. New administrative structures were introduced, taxes were imposed, Islam spread throughout the region, and over the following centuries, a large number of Bosnians became Muslims. Sarajevo, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary arrived in the city with his wife Sophie. They probably had no idea that this visit would become one of the most important moments of the 20th century. A Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip assassinated Franz Ferdinand. Austria-Hungary then declared war on Serbia, and that conflict grew into something much bigger. World War I. A single event in Sarajevo helped ignite a war that would reshape Europe. World War I changed the political map of Europe. The Austro-Hungarian Empire eventually collapsed. Bosnia became part of a new South Slavic kingdom together with Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. In 1929, that kingdom was renamed Yugoslavia. Then came another devastating chapter. World War II. Germany occupied Yugoslavia. Bosnia became part of a larger conflict involving different political and resistance movements. 2 major resistance movements emerged in the Balkans, the Chetniks. This is the eternal flame. And to understand what this flame means, we have to go back to 1945. After years of occupation during the Second World War, Sarajevo was liberated on April 6, 1945. 1 year later, on April 6, 1946, this memorial was installed to mark the first anniversary of Sarajevo's liberation. It was created to honor the fighters who helped liberate the city and those who lost their lives during the war. But the story of the eternal flame goes beyond the Second World War. Look closely at the memorial, and you'll notice that the inscription is written in 3 colors, blue, white, and red. These colors were associated with the flag of Yugoslavia at the time, and the flame itself was not only a tribute to those who died, it also carried a connection to the new Yugoslav state and its victory in the war. The eternal flame was officially opened and presented to the public in 1947, so when you stand here, you're looking at more than a World War II memorial. You're looking at a piece of Sarajevo's Yugoslav history. And look at these 2 statues at the entrance. They were created as part of this building's original design in the early 1930s, and both figures are holding lamps above the entrance, so they were not only designed as decoration but also to light the entrance. Today, they have become one of the most recognizable details of this historic building in Sarajevo. If there's one thing you notice about this country almost immediately, it's how much beauty surrounds you. Wherever you go, there seems to be something that catches your attention. But beyond the scenery, what really stands out is the history. Bosnia is filled with old buildings that have survived for generations, carrying traces of the people and cultures that came before them. And then there are the churches and other places of worship, each with its own character and history. One of the things that makes this place so interesting is the way different communities have shared the same cities and streets: Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others, each leaving their own mark on the country. That diversity is a part of Bosnia's story, and honestly, that's something I really appreciated while exploring these streets. But Bosnia isn't only about history and architecture. Life here also happens in the cafes, restaurants, and outdoor seating areas scattered throughout the old parts of the city. People sit together, drink coffee, talk, eat, and simply enjoy their time. And everywhere you look, you find another old building, another street, or another small detail that makes you want to stop and look a little closer. Even the public spaces have their own atmosphere, places where people gather, sit, relax, and spend time together. And then just ahead, something else catches my attention. I see monument, and then I came across a place connected to one of Bosnia's most remembered writers, Hasan Kikic. Kikic was born in 1905 and became an important Bosnian writer and intellectual. During the Second World War, he joined the partisans. On May 6, 1942, he was killed in an ambush near Mount Čemernica. His story is one of those small pieces of Bosnia's past that you can easily walk past without ever knowing what happened here. Then the river appears, and suddenly the city opens. Buildings rise on both sides of the water, religious architecture, residential buildings, modern urban life, all inside one frame. This is where the story of Sarajevo becomes visually obvious. It's a city built layer by layer. Trade shaped it, empires shaped it, religious communities shaped it, modern Europe shaped it, war changed it, and the people living here keep shaping it today. Look at this view, the river on one side, the city on both sides, and all these beautiful buildings. This is why I keep wanting to walk further. The more I walk through Bosnia, the more I understand what survival can look like. Sometimes survival is a reconstructed bridge. Sometimes it's an old house still standing. Sometimes it's simply a cafe full of people on an ordinary afternoon. The history is heavy, but the city isn't only its pain, it's also the life that continued after it. So when you look at Bosnia, look beyond the ruins, beyond the headlines, beyond the dates. Look at the people still living here. This city has lost a lot, but it's still standing, still working, still welcoming people. And that's something I really respect. This is the Sarajevo I enjoy most. Not a postcard, a living place, people buying things, drinking coffee, talking, working. Bosčaršija is part of Sarajevo's historic core. It developed during the Ottoman period and became an important center of crafts and commerce, and even today, those traditions are still visible in the streets. Then I found a problem every traveler knows. I already had too much luggage, and I still wanted to buy something. This bag was handmade. Okay, give me this one.
Okay.
What's your name?
Lila.
Leva. You are a good girl, you know? And that makes the decision even harder, because buying a souvenir isn't really about needing another object, It's about taking a small piece of the place home with you, and this little shop interaction became one of my favorite moments of the day. As evening arrives, Sarajevo starts to change. The streets become busier, people finish their day, cafes begin filling up, and then the road starts climbing into the hills. These hills are an important part of Sarajevo's identity, and as you climb higher, the way you see the city begins to change. The higher you go, the more of the valley opens up below. And then we finally reach it, Shuta Tabija, the Yellow Fortress. But this isn't simply a viewpoint, it was built as a military fortification. Juta Tabija is part of the historic fortified settlement of Vratnik. The Vratnik fortifications were built during the Ottoman period, mainly between the late 1720s and 1739. The defensive system included walls, gates, and several fortified positions, including the Yellow Fortress and the White Fortress. From here, you can understand why this location was so important for the defense of Sarajevo. The story begins with an attack on Sarajevo in 1697. The army of Prince Eugene of Savoy entered the city and caused enormous destruction. Sarajevo had been largely open and poorly fortified. The attack exposed how vulnerable the city was. Decades later, Ottoman authorities responded by strengthening the city's eastern defenses, and the fortified settlement of Vratnik was built above the historic city. The world really is a small place. I'd actually met her before, in Serbia, and now, somehow, we had met again, this time in Sarajevo. I honestly didn't expect it. When you're traveling from one country to another, you meet so many people, and most of the time, you never see them again. But sometimes, life has other plans, and this was one of those moments. We started talking, laughing, and enjoying the evening together. From here, the purpose becomes obvious. The fortress sits high above Sarajevo. From a military point of view, that meant visibility. The valley below could be watched, approaches to the city could be defended, and artillery could be positioned above the settlement. What we now experience as a beautiful viewpoint was once part of Sarajevo's defensive system. But Sarajevo's story didn't stop with the Ottoman period. In 1878, Austria-Hungary occupied Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the old Ottoman fortifications became part of another military conflict. The Yellow Fortress was one of the defensive positions involved in Sarajevo's resistance to the Austro-Hungarian advance. Think about that for a moment. The people who stood here centuries ago were looking at the same valley, but for a completely different reason. They were watching for danger. Today, we come here to watch the sunset, and then you turn around and Sarajevo opens beneath you. The old city, the rooftops, the minarets, the newer parts of Sarajevo, and the mountains surrounding everything. Everyone around me seems to be doing the same thing, taking out their phones, taking photographs, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. For a few minutes, nobody seems to be in a hurry. Mostar, a city surrounded by mountains, with the Neretva River running through it, and a bridge that has become one of the most recognizable symbols of Bosnia and Herzegovina. At first glance, it almost looks unreal. The Neretva cuts through the valley. Mosques rise above the rooftops. Stone streets lead toward the old bridge, and everywhere you look, there is beauty. But Mostar has another story, a story about empires, religion, war, destruction, and rebuilding. Just a short walk from Mostar's historic center stands one of the city's most important Ottoman landmarks, the Karajazbek Mosque. Built in 1557, the mosque was commissioned by Mehmed Beg Karadzios, one of the most important Ottoman-era benefactors in Mostar, but the mosque was never meant to stand alone. Karadzios Beg also established a madrasa, a religious primary school, a library, a public kitchen, and other charitable institutions through his waqf. And these institutions became an important part of the religious, educational, social, and cultural life of Mostar. And that's what makes this place so interesting. It isn't simply a beautiful old mosque, it's part of the story of how Mostar developed into an important Ottoman city. Walking through Mostar, you quickly realize that religion is not simply part of the city's architecture, it is part of its history and memory. Mosques, churches, cemeteries, they stand across the city, reminders of the different communities that have shaped Mostar over the centuries. But many of these historic places also carry scars from the War of the 1990s, and the conflict caused severe damage across Mostar, including many religious buildings and much of the historic city. Before the war, Mostar was a diverse city, home to Bosniaks, Croats, Serbs, and others. But after Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence in 1992, the country descended into war. Mostar became one of the major battlegrounds of the conflict. The war caused enormous physical destruction. Buildings were damaged or destroyed. Religious sites were also damaged or destroyed. Many families were forced to leave their homes. And in 1993, the conflict in Mostar changed again as fighting broke out between Bosniak and Bosnian Croat forces. The city became divided between opposing forces. And this is one of Mostar's oldest Orthodox landmarks. This is the Church of the Nativity of the Theotokos, also known as the Old Orthodox Church. The church was rebuilt in the 1830s during the Ottoman period, and it became an important part of the Orthodox community in Mostar. What makes this place especially interesting is its simplicity. It's a small stone church, but its history is much bigger than its size. During the war in the 1990s, the church was heavily damaged and burned. After the war, it was reconstructed, and today, when you step inside, you're not simply looking at an old religious building, you're looking at a part of Mostar's Orthodox heritage that survived a very difficult chapter in the city's history. And from up here, you can see almost all of Mostar, and standing above the city is the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity. This Orthodox cathedral was built between 1863 and 1873 during the final years of Ottoman rule in Mostar. Its position on the hillside made it one of the most recognizable landmarks in the city's skyline. But this building also carries the memory of one of Mostar's darkest chapters. During the war in the 1990s, the cathedral was destroyed. Today, its reconstruction is part of Mostar's ongoing effort to preserve its religious and cultural heritage, and from this hill, you can see how different parts of Mostar come together in one view. Mosques, churches, the old city, the mountains, and the Neretva River running through it all. And now we're entering the Kaski Mehmed Pasha Mosque. This mosque was built during the Ottoman period around the early 17th century, but what makes this place interesting is that it was never just about the prayer hall. The mosque was part of a larger complex that included religious and educational institutions. and an ablution fountain in the courtyard. This fountain was used for washing before prayer, and it was an important part of the mosque's everyday life. Standing here today, you can still see how religion, education, and community life were connected within the same Ottoman complex. And this is one of the details that helps explain how Mostar developed during the Ottoman period. And then we come to one of Bosnia and Herzegovina's most recognizable cities, Mostar. The city's name is connected to the word most, bridge, and to the historic bridge keepers known as Mostari. And there's one bridge that has come to represent the city itself. Stari Most, the old bridge. The bridge was built during the Ottoman period and completed in 1566. For centuries, it became one of the defining landmarks of Mostar. But during the Bosnian War, on November 9th, 1993, the bridge was destroyed and fell into the Neretva River. A bridge that had connected the two sides of the city had become a powerful symbol of the destruction caused by war. And yet, the story didn't end there. After the war, international efforts began to rebuild the bridge. Parts of the original stone were recovered from the Neretva, and the bridge was reconstructed using traditional techniques. In 2004, Stari Most stood again above the Neretva, but this time it represented more than architecture. It became a symbol of reconciliation, cooperation, and the coexistence of different communities. And for me, standing here is more than simply visiting a famous landmark. You're standing in a place that carries centuries of history and the memory of a war and a story of rebuilding. After years of fighting, peace negotiations took place in Dayton, Ohio, in the United States. On November 21st, 1995, the Dayton Peace Agreement was initialed. It brought the war to an end, and its constitutional arrangements shaped the political structure of post-war Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Constitution established two main entities, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska. The agreement was not a simple solution to a complicated history, but it ended the fighting and gave Bosnia and Herzegovina a framework for peace. And this is the Bosnia I wanted to see, not only the Bosnia of war photographs and history books, but the Bosnia of today, a country where people work, study, travel, open businesses, meet friends, and simply live their lives. The past is still here, but so is the future. One of the most fascinating things about Bosnia and Herzegovina is how different influences exist side by side. Ottoman heritage, European architecture, Slavic history, different religious traditions, different communities, all of them have left their mark on this land. Honestly, before coming to Bosnia, I knew some of the history. I knew about the war, I knew about Sarajevo, I knew about Mostar and the famous bridge, but seeing this country with my own eyes feels completely different, because when you read history in a book, it's just dates. Here, you can actually walk through it. From the Illyrians to the Romans, from medieval Bosnia to the Ottoman Empire, from Austro-Hungarian rule to Yugoslavia, from the tragedy of war to the rebuilding of Sarajevo and Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina has passed through centuries of change, and perhaps the most important chapter is the one being written today. This is Bosnia, a country with scars, but also with beauty, a country with a difficult past, but a living present, and a future that is still being written.